Speaking from experience, the investment banking world is crazy. You work 80 to 100-hour weeks, barely get any rest, and are supposed to create client-ready, perfect presentations and financial models. So what is it like actually starting the job? I surveyed 7 investment bankers working at these top banks who have been on the desk anywhere from 4 to 10 weeks. And today, we're going to be going over their hours and personal life, the toughest challenges they faced, and their levels of fulfillment from their work. First off, let's start with their hours and personal life. I asked the bankers for their lowest, average, and highest number of hours worked, and starting at the low, there was one outlier at 35 hours, but most were at 50 to 60 and one at 75. The average number of hours worked was mainly in the range of 65 to 75, with 2 outliers at 85, and the highest was at the range of 75 to 85, but with 3 outliers at 100, 105, and 115 hours. As a new banker, you're really spending your first 1 to 2 months getting up to speed with everything, and how busy you are totally depends on deal flow. New bankers are super slow at everything, but are still sometimes thrown into the fire if manpower is just needed. But as a complete newbie, you're a complete liability because you're bound to make a ton of mistakes. So none of your work, literally none of your work, can be 100% trusted and needs to be looked over very thoroughly. I also asked these bankers how their personal lives have been affected since they started, and there was quite a range for this as well. From one end of the spectrum, someone on the more chill side said that they're still able to exercise 4 to 5 times a week, while several shared the sentiment that they can't do anything social during the week, can't make long-term plans because work can take over at any moment. Weekends are really just used for catching up on sleep. All of this aligns with my own experience, and what you should take away from this is that every banker's experience totally depends on their firm and group. And back at JPM, we would always say to enjoy the chill times because when it rains, it pours, and it pours damn hard. When asked if there was anything they wish they had done to feel more prepared for the job, many of these bankers said one thing: financial modeling. And if you're watching this video because you're interested in one day breaking into investment banking and being a banker yourself, then I highly recommend Wall Street Prep, which for a limited time is offering a Cyber Week discount, which I'll go into a little bit later. Wall Street Prep offers financial modeling courses so you can be ready not just for interviews, but your job on the desk as a banker. And what I really like is that they have you dig into financial statements and build models using real numbers, just like what I used to do at JP Morgan. They offer a lot of great courses, but the 2 I particularly recommend are the accounting course if you don't have prior accounting knowledge, and the premium modeling package, which has been taken by over 100,000 students and goes over all the key valuation concepts I learned in banking like DCFs, comps, accretion dilution, and LBOs. Wall Street Prep has been around since 2004, and they help train employees at all of the top banks and institutions in the world, including at Wharton, where a lot of my classmates took their live instructor sessions. If any of this is of interest to you, use code CYBER2024 between December 2nd and 8th to get 20% off for a limited time, and I'll leave information for all of this in this video's description. Next up, I asked the bankers what they thought their biggest challenges were, and I have a lot of commentary based on their responses. The first challenge was not being able to go on dates during the week, and this points to the larger issue of dating and relationships while in banking. Ideally, you have an understanding significant other who doesn't mind that you work late into the nights, on weekends, have to cancel trips, and are constantly glued to your phone every waking hour. But more likely than not, your relationship is going to get super stress tested, and if you're not in a relationship, dating still is surprisingly very doable if you make the time, but you really need to prioritize it because especially when you're on a live deal, you just really won't have a lot of free time. The second challenge was attention to detail. One banker said, maintaining perfect attention to detail for all of my work is hard, and I still find careless mistakes here and there. It feels bad, and I feel pretty dumb when mistakes get found. This is a super common first lesson that bankers learn on the job. People say perfection is impossible, but in banking, clients are paying bankers millions of dollars, and so everything really actually does need to be perfect. So even if on page 35 on a 60-page presentation, there's an extra space in the font size 7 footnote where there shouldn't be, your associate or MD will catch that and tell you to change it. And so it's gonna feel like things are easy to catch in hindsight when you make mistakes, which is why this attention to detail is a tough thing to get used to because you're gonna keep making a lot of mistakes when you're starting off until you get really used to all this and catch everything pretty much or most of it yourself during your first drafts. Third challenge was on learning about your industry. One banker said carving out the time to study the industry can be hard. Especially as you get more senior in banking, you can't just be a numbers person and need to increasingly become an industry expert. Clients need to see that you understand their industry. Otherwise, they're going to be wary of your advice. And even analysts need to showcase their ability to learn about their industry if they want to show their senior bankers that they have the potential to thrive as a VP or director in banking. I actually struggled a lot with studying healthcare myself when I was at JPM, when I was in the healthcare coverage group, because ironically, science was my least favorite subject. And no matter how many times I read about a biotech company's drug, its mechanism of action, and all these complex science terms, I would never be innately interested. And so I really knew that I didn't have a long-term future with the group. Fourth challenge had to do with finding mentors. One banker said it's really hard to find people in the office who will teach you because everyone is really fighting their own battles. Based on my discussions with friends in consulting, tech, and other industry jobs, there is a massive effort at most companies to help new employees through internal coaching and mentorship programs. But this is really not the case in banking unless you either get really lucky or are in an internal diversity program. Even still, because bankers are working insane hours, even spending 1 extra hour in the office, especially at the end of the night, helping out a new analyst is a lot to ask for. And so there's a huge culture of really just learning on your own. You can definitely ask fellow analysts and associates questions here and there, but there is limited handholding when you have to build PowerPoint pages or a financial model. And so you generally just have to look at previous PowerPoints and models and kind of teach yourself. This does make you learn faster in the long run, but it can be kind of a lonely and tough process while you're getting through them. The fifth challenge is about being constantly tested and growing mentally strong. One banker said a challenge was not being good at something, particularly at this age, this far along in my career. I knew it would happen, but constantly having to apologize and not having my instinct calibrated for the right course of action makes it mentally taxing. In my opinion, it takes roughly 6 months to feel settled on the desk as a banker. But up until that point, you're constantly making mistakes, asking your busy coworkers questions, and being assigned work that you initially have no idea how to do. You may have also moved to a new city and new place, and so it's really easy to feel overwhelmed when you first start. And so you're really getting tested mentally on a day-to-day basis, especially since you're working crazy long hours. And quite honestly, it'll be more likely than not a very psychologically tough first 6 months. But as time goes on, you generally learn how to do the job, you're better able to manage your time, and as you grow more senior, you work less hours. And so there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Last up, let's go into how fulfilled these bankers feel from their work. I first asked them to rank how fulfilled they felt with their careers, with 1 being low and 5 being high, and received 1 at 2, 3 at 3, 2 at 4, and 1 at 5. When asked how fulfilled they felt, one banker said, not fulfilling. Still on training wheels, proving ourselves, so it'll take time before we take on responsibilities and are allowed to contribute more. On the flip side, another said, the job feels important because I'm talking and dealing with CEOs and CFOs every week, and so I feel a great sense of importance and pride in my work. Another one I found kind of humorous was going back home to a foreign country and watching how hard people work for a living in physically demanding labor-intensive ways puts my complaining about arranging logos on a page into perspective. Last but not least, one banker said, I find it fulfilling, but I think the answer is highly dependent on the person. What I wanted out of my MBA was to be in a role where I can be pushed to grow because I'm uncomfortable, and I think banking does that for me. The subject matter is new. I constantly feel like I'm messing up. For example, literally just now missed my analyst making a mistake in a model that my VP caught in the output we sent through. On the job so far, I think I've had the opportunity to become more self-aware. I learned just how much I value being good at something versus learning, what the esteem or acknowledgement of my peers means to me, and how ambitious I am. Like an MBA program, the limitation of time makes you pressure test what is important to you and who and what in your life you want to prioritize. I sought all of these things, so I'm okay with where I am. If you're looking to quote unquote make an impact, I would say banking might be a bit disappointing. The work can be cool sometimes. There's always a cool CEO, CFO company that's in the news, but banking at the end of the day is really just a glorified office job, especially if you're at a bulge bracket. Honestly, I read that and was like, damn, that's kind of deep. And so even though that was long, I wanted to read you guys all that whole thing. What I take away from all this is that banking and almost any job is really what you make it. Back when I was in banking, I always tried to go in with a positive outlook and knew that a large number of people would be happy to take my spot at any point, and so I rarely ever complained to myself or others. On the other hand, some of my fellow analysts really hated their lives, and that eventually caught up with them in terms of rankings and deals that they were staffed on. Banking is by no means an easy job, and as we discussed in this video, there are a ton of challenges, and your experience is also determined by your firm, your group, and the people you work with. But I hope this video gives you a taste as to what banking is really like in the first few months, because it's a really tough dynamic period, and for every single person is very different. But hopefully after seeing the responses for these 7 bankers, it kind of gives you an understanding of what working in banking is actually like. That said, thank you guys all so much as always for watching, and hope to catch you all in the next video.